Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our remote work webinar, which we are live streaming from the new visitor center that is run by Cape Town Tourism at our newly revamped City Hall. It's a wonderful morning here in Cape Town. My name is Lance Kroling. I'm the Director for Enterprise and Investment at the City of Cape Town. And it's also my great honor to, in fact, be the facilitator for this webinar today. And we've assembled a fantastic panel here, really bringing out the diverse experiences and the diverse perspectives around remote working. And so we're going to get right into this. And our first speaker today is, in fact, none other than Alderman Vos, who's the Maker Member for Economic Opportunities and Asset Management at the City of Cape Town. And I'm going to hand over to him to give us the opening slide presentation. So Alderman Vos, all over to you.
Thank you very much, Lance. Good morning to you all. We are coming live to you from our new interactive visitor information center located in the City Hall. Greetings to our audience, albeit virtual, but I can see you through my computer screen. And also to my fellow panelists, welcome and thank you very much for joining us. Tourism made the world go round, and now our world has been turned upside down. And while change is inevitable, COVID-19 brought about such drastic shifts that require us to significantly reconsider the ways we work and live, and that includes tourism. And this is why we've been looking at the digital nomads and to whom we are marketing Cape Town as a remote working destination. Digital nomads have been around for some time, but the pandemic has amplified the model of working remotely from anywhere. By adjusting our focus and our strategies, organizations in a host of industries, from hospitality to retail to accommodation, can boost their bottom lines and the economy by catering specifically to digital nomads from across the country and from across the globe. So thank you for joining us at this remote working webinar hosted by the City of Cape Town in partnership with Cape Town Tourism. We are bringing together leaders from key sectors who will be sharing their insights on how and why to appeal to these 21st century professionals. You'll hear from experts at organizations such as Work Wanderers, Andrea, an advocate for the digital nomad movement, Jeremy from the Federated Hospitality Association of South Africa, Lisa from Cape Town Tourism, and we'll also be joined by a specialist in immigration law who will speak on the remote working visa, Angelika, for which I've been lobbying national government. Because over 20 countries, such as Germany, Dubai, Mauritius, Australia, Portugal, Norway, to name a few, have proactively adopted an equivalent of this type of visa. A strategic communication approach focused on international reputation management is our six-pillar destination strategy, which really aims to position Cape Town as a premier destination in Africa to visit, live, work, study, play, and invest. And this initiative was designed to amplify the wealth of information under each theme to one portal, www.thisis.capetown. And from my perspective, it really complements any aspect of the city's economy, from lifestyle to opportunity. It is international facing with the objective of reigniting demand to visit, live, work, study, play, or invest in Cape Town. And so since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, it really accelerates our approach to focus on new trends, best practices, and partnership opportunities. And so let's face it, the pandemic has drastically forced us all, from bosses to businesses to government, to alter the way we live, work, and play. And those looking to simply return to the way things were before were left behind. So it might seem to go without saying, but let me put this into perspective with a few statistics. A Workforce for the Future survey conducted in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa by Cisco last year says that only 5% of employees surveyed worked from home prior to the lockdown. But now, after a year of the global pandemic, nearly 9 in 10 workers want greater ownership in defining how and when they use office space, blending office-based and remote working. So Cape Town is an ideal destination for digital nomads from across the country and world who are looking to blend the aspects of tourism and work into their day-to-day. And the Cape Town tourism industry is ready to innovate for it. Not long into the pandemic, we saw local guest house owners transform their services by offering affordable long-term stays. And also the board at Cape Town Tourism, the biggest tourism partner in the mother city, and also our official destination marketing organization at Cape Town, decided to forfeit their collective board remuneration and to share it with deserving SMMEs. One such beneficiary was Dulukuyana, the owner of Seven Colors Eatery. It's a catering company specializing in African-inspired cuisine. She quickly needed to start trading from home and so started offering a bespoke service of providing cooked meals for dinner, which were delivered to her clients' homes. Now, so as local government, we sprang into action by implementing key measures that would help ease the burden onto small tourism businesses through the lockdown. We developed an SMME COVID-19 toolkit filled with essentials such as hand sanitizer, masks, and customer safety posters to help get businesses back on their feet. We also allowed for guest houses and B&Bs to reclassify as residential properties on a temporary basis, allowing owners to reduce their rate bills during this difficult period. The city also adopted rental relief options for business lessees, so to help cushion the blow of restricted economic activity and also the potential loss of business. And in September last year, together with Cape Town Tourism and our tourism partners in Cape Town, we developed a bounce-back strategy for the tourism sector. And in February this year, almost a year of learning hard lessons, we implemented our 10-point tourism strategy. Now, this strategy provides clear vision with targeted measures for us to really revitalize tourism. It includes assisting the industry by coming up with new ways of doing business, driving domestic tourism campaigns, and funding industry partners, such as Cape Town Tourism, the Air Access Initiative, and also Cape Cruise. Identifying, developing, and training for increasingly diverse tourism products have become our priority because we now need to set Cape Town apart from those other destinations. We need to focus on our culture, our cuisine, and this also includes community tourism route development, such as Langa, Khayelitsha, Mitchell's Plain, and Boerkaap. And there's already evidence of it working with domestic flights to Cape Town International Airport, rising by 66% in the first half of May, the strongest recovery since the resumption of local flights in June 2020. Restaurants and local tourism providers and places of accommodation have also seen a resultant uptick in business. And so under this strategy, we will also continue to work with national government to make sure that we support the tourism industry as best as we can so that we can position our country, South Africa, as a destination of choice, and also looking at Cape Town's value proposition in the whole business ecosystem. And so therefore I'm communicating with my national counterparts to consider adjusting some of the new lockdown 2 restrictions announced by the President, because our economy cannot afford these curfews. Losing trading every hour in terms of the number of hours available for trading has really pushed many businesses to the brink, and with many not being able to retain customers, pay bills, or keep staff employed. So basically, our entertainment, our hospitality, and all tourism-linked businesses really need every hour of trading. And so Cape Town Tourism, along with our industry partners, will also continue to drive its successful domestic tourism campaigns to generate local demand for the tourism industry. And these will be run alongside the City of Cape Town's destination marketing campaign, run from the Place Marketing Unit within my department. So my team and I are working very closely with organizations and businesses in the tourism industry to market Cape Town as one of a destination of choice. And so that will be leveraging our city-to-city agreements, because as a city government, we have a lot of agreements with cities around the world and in Africa, and it's important for us to look into those city-to-city agreements at the tourism and travel opportunities that exist so that we can get going on the type of demand that will drive new business opportunities to Cape Town. of course, funding of the Air Access Initiative so that we can boost connectivity between Cape Town and other cities in Africa and global. Also engaging airlines to market Cape Town on their platforms, and then very importantly, to facilitate discussions between Cape Town tourism and the private sector so that we can get our products and services aligned for this new remote working trend, because it's all about pricing, pricing, pricing. And so the Mother City has also made the global online top 50 list of best cities for remote working. And so these are the things that we really need to draw inspiration from. We are seen by the world as a destination of choice. So let's make sure that we can welcome the world to our city. And therefore we need to work with national government to amend the Immigration Act to allow for the remote working visa. And we'll hear more about that during today's webinar, how we can get that over the line so that we can really make it easier for the remote working digital nomads to select South Africa as a country, because we are making it easier for them in terms of the visa regime. So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Being a prime destination for workations has been our best kept secret for many years, and a very useful ace to pull out at this particular time. And so you'll hear today from the panel, who will all be bringing a wealth of experience and a lot of insight into this remote working trend to this conversation, so that as Cape Town, we can welcome the world to our city and really make sure that Cape Townians appreciate the fact that the visitor economy is everyone's business, because these are exciting times. Let's see how we can unlock opportunities for all. Thank you very much. I hand back to you, Lance.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alderman Vos, for that introduction, and I think it really sets the scene very well for our discussion today. And as Alderman Vos did elaborate in there, I mean, certainly COVID has been a huge crisis for the tourism industry. But you know, in any crisis, there's opportunities that do arise. And one of those opportunities is, in fact, remote working. Because what we have seen is that people are now obviously working from home. But you know, you don't only have to work from home. There are now opportunities for you to, in fact, go and work at places that the tourism industry provides that can provide a much better environment for you to, in fact, work from, both for Cape Townians, for out-of-towners, and for international guests. So we're going to hear a lot more about that today, in fact, from the tourism industry itself. But right now, I want to hand over to Lisa Ann Hoskins. She's the Destination Executive Management at Cape Town Tourism, and she's been working there for 4 years. And we want to get your perspectives on how we can really grab this opportunity for remote working. So over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lance. And good morning, everyone. As Alderman Vos has indicated, we are certainly living in very different times, and we need to start thinking differently, and we need to start perhaps evaluating different opportunities that we might not have considered before. Employers are certainly a lot more flexible in terms of where and how their staff operate, and that's been amazing. That's been really great, because it's actually assisted in adding to their business survival. Most of us have said goodbye to the traditional 9-to-5 environment, and we've said hello to work from home, or in fact, hello to work from pretty much anywhere. And work from home has actually become the traditional daily grind. What we have seen is that Cape Town is ahead in terms of being a digital tourism destination. It's ahead in Africa for digital nomads, and that's mainly because of Cape Town's lifestyle. We have the beaches, we have the beautiful restaurants, we have the wine farms, and we have the amazing co-working spaces, which just sets the platform for digital nomads and for remote working. So when we talk about remote working, we really see it as an opportunity that the hospitality sector can benefit from to keep their doors open by innovating the existing product to attract local remote workers and eventually international remote workers while still maintaining their COVID protocols. Some of the things that we're still learning about, and I say learning about because this trend is it's actually very new to us and we're still learning to embrace it, is how the accommodation sector can actually pivot their products and find ways to attract locals and other visitors in our country who usually work from home or work from the office, and get them to change their place of work for one day, for 1 week, or for 1 month. These remote workers will now be able to, or are now be able to work from offices, from day offices, which are not only day offices. They will have access to a gym, a spa, a yoga studio, a hike. So this is definitely an option that should be considered, if only for a limited time. Airbnb estimates that the average stay for a digital nomad is 28 days. It could actually be longer. An example of a company that has really thought out of the box and has really been innovative is actually MSC Cruises. That's the cruise lining company. And they actually introduced a 7-week have an office at sea package, and that's called Smart Working at Sea, where you can go on a 7-day cruise and actually have your office with a sea view for 7 days. You can take your entire family along, and your kids will enjoy a dedicated mini club. So it's an opportunity for the whole family. When we look at other destinations and how they rank, when considering digital nomads, Vancouver in Canada ranks tops in the United States, and they actually have 47% of their workers actually work remotely. And what this has done is that it's actually increased the revenue from domestic travel. Vancouver's certainly not a cheap city, but it's very similar to Cape Town in terms of the beauty, in terms of the access to the city, in terms of the mountains and the walking trails. So similar to Vancouver, Cape Town makes a very good destination for remote working. So Cape Town currently sits at number 42 out of 50 of the best places to work remotely. Number 1 is Estonia in Europe. And what they've done is they have implemented a remote working visa for 12 months. So remote workers, digital nomads, can work in Estonia for 12 months. They've got the free internet. Their digital economy has actually boomed. 99% of public services is available 24 hours a day. The cost of living is very affordable. Rent in Estonia is $500 a month. So they are meeting all the requirements that a digital nomad needs. Cape Town, we feel, can certainly up its ranking as we become more geared towards the needs of digital nomads, and as we start to embrace this trend. Obviously, there are a number of things that we need to get right as a city. We need to get reliable and fast internet access. We need to address our load shedding. We need to address visitor safety concerns. So there are a number of foundational aspects that we need to put in place before we will be ready or up our ranking in terms of this rating. As Alderman Vos has mentioned, we have seen a steady increase in the domestic market. Domestic tourism has increased from 16% in August 2020 to 66% in May this year, and we do predict that this trend will continue. The international market, unfortunately, we know has been decimated, and we're looking at 16% recovery since 2019, or compared to 2019. So really going forward, the domestic market's going to be our bread and butter, and we really need to look at ways to expose the domestic market to more options, and to balance and to find home office balance, and to get rid of the home office fatigue. So what would remote workers be looking for as a minimum? They're looking for, obviously, office facilities. They're looking for fast and reliable Wi-Fi, good leisure experiences, which Cape Town has in abundance, whether it be a gym, a spa experience, beach, cleanliness, good service, space, home comforts, exciting meal options, and of course, affordability and COVID safety. according to a recent Booking.com article, 52% of global travelers actually said they would extend their stay, their business travel, if they had the opportunity to undertake a leisure experience. So, as Cape Town Tourism, we are not yet experts in the field of digital tourism. It's a new trend, it's very new for us. But what we are expert at or in is connecting people, creating a platform to provide info and create awareness on different opportunities. And this is all part of the destination and the industry recovery. We do realize that this is not, or this won't be for everyone. So it's very important that you do your homework. You assess the opportunity cost. You might need to partner or collaborate with another product to fill any gaps that you might have identified and to meet the specific needs and requirements of the digital nomad. So the purpose of today is really to give, as Alderman Vos has said, is really to give the industry some insights on the global trend. We know that COVID has accelerated the trend, and many countries, many cities have actually woken up and sat up and taken full advantage of this. As Alderman Vos has also said, we have an awesome opportunity to engage with the director of a local hotel who has embraced this concept, as well as a digital nomad expert who is actually pioneering this lifestyle in Cape Town. So finally, going forward, we'd like to learn from other products who have actually started to implement this and to embrace it and who have adapted their offerings. We would love to learn from some real Cape Town case studies, and we'd also like to support you in your marketing endeavors. So certainly a very difficult and a very challenging time, but at the same time, very exciting. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa, and thanks for that. And I think it gives us a very good introduction to remote working and what the challenges are. I mean, as both you and Alderman Vos said, we have been voted to be in the top 50 of remote working destinations. But I know that in Cape Town, we're never satisfied with being in the top 50. We want to be in the top 10. And I think that that's what this webinar is about today, is about trying to bring together all of the different players to look at what is it that can move us from number 42 into the top 10 position, because I think we really can do that. And I do want to encourage everyone out there as well, if you have any questions for our panelists, please do send them through, and then I will have a question and answer session at the end of our panel discussion. So we'll definitely get to your questions at the end. So thanks for that. And now we're going to move on to Andrae Smith, who is, and let me read this, and I put my glasses on for this, a digital nomad, an entrepreneur, a travel enthusiast, and strategic marketer. And she's the founder and CEO of Work Wanderers, a South African company centered around the digital nomad lifestyle. But I'm not going to read any more. I think we're going to ask Andrea to explain to us what Work Wanderers does and what the opportunities are in remote working. So let me hand over to you, Andrea.
Thanks, Lance. It's so great to be here. Yeah, so excited to be getting into the digital nomad scene here in Cape Town and sharing more stuff with you guys. So a little bit about Work Wanderers. I fell in love with the digital nomad lifestyle over 3 years ago when I was fortunate enough to work remotely. I was a head of marketing for a startup here in Cape Town, and I negotiated a remote work contract. So I went and worked overseas for a few months, and I fell in love with this lifestyle, like I said, and wanted to build a company around it and really kind of pioneer the digital nomad scene in Cape Town, because we have so much opportunity here for that. So I'll just move on to the next slide. So I built Work Wanderers with the goal and vision to build a global digital nomad community. And by offering experiences, co-living, co-working experiences in locations around the world, starting with Cape Town and then moving to other locations like Bali, Portugal, etc. So I wanted to live the lifestyle and meet amazing digital nomads from all over, and I built the business around that. So in 2019, we ran retreats in Cape Town and Bali. And then the pandemic hit in 2020. So, you know, the whole business centered around travel and community. It kind of came to a bit of a standstill. So to pivot and to kind of adapt to the situation and to still serve the audience we had, we created an online program called the Digital Nomad Accelerator to help aspiring digital nomads quit the 9 to 5 and build online successful careers. We're still super excited to run the retreats and be in the travel space. And because I, as the founder, have been in Cape Town since the beginning of that pandemic, I've really tried to build and foster the community in Cape Town specifically. We had a Cape Town retreat, like I said, and a WhatsApp group associated with that. And that actually just grew organically. We left it open, and from 20 members on there, it grew to over 180 within a couple of months. And those were just people speaking word of mouth that were traveling to Cape Town as digital nomads and wanted to be part of the community. So in the interim, I have been running meetups, events, and yeah, just trying to build that community in Cape Town, and have gotten a really good insight into what they need, what their desires are, what they need to actually be successful as digital nomads here, and what they're looking for. So it's been an exciting time for Work Wanderers. You know, it's actually been really good in a way, because now we have an online element, and we're super excited to start running retreats and co-living, co-working experiences in the near future again. Yeah.
Fantastic, Andrea. And can you tell me, I mean, are there digital nomads currently in Cape Town? And if there are, where are they staying?
Cool. So before we roll to that, I just want to show you a video that we had for a retreat in Cape Town, which they can roll now, and then we'll get... get on to the next slide. Kind of stuck. Okay, whoops. Okay, guys, technical issues here, hold on. Okay, cool. Yeah, so to answer your question about the digital nomads in Cape Town, yes, so they definitely are digital nomads in Cape Town. They've been here. I started seeing an influx of digital nomads and kind of growing my community since about October last year. So even during the pandemic, they were traveling, and it was very interesting to see that, as they were kind of some of the only tourists that were entering the country, kind of in a large scale. So yeah, since October, and now of course we're moving into winter. So traditionally, this isn't a hot season for Cape Town, but I am still seeing them coming in, and it's quite interesting to see. So in terms of where they stay and kind of where they congregate, you know, they're all over Cape Town, but I do notice that a lot of them stay long-term in the Atlantic Seaboard and the City Bowl. So looking for long-term monthly rentals in those areas. So a lot of them go for Airbnbs, guest houses, small kind of boutique hotels, and sometimes hotels as well. So yes, Atlantic Seaboard and City Bowl, prime areas being Greenpoint and Sea Point. It's filled with digital nomads and foreigners. I think there's a lot of cafes and co-working spaces around, so it's very convenient, as well as the City Bowl, Gardens and Tempest Cliff areas specifically. And then yeah, we have some other areas that I noticed where there's a lot of digital nomads, being Bloberg. You know, it's very big for kite surfing and surfing. So yeah, that definitely attracts the digital nomads on that side, as well as Muizenberg for the same reasons. Yeah, and that's pretty much the areas that we find them. You know, they do kind of travel into different areas, but yeah. I also think you wanted to speak about why Cape Town's such a hot spot, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, Lisa mentioned quite a lot in terms of why Cape Town's so attractive from a tourist perspective. But what we found with digital nomads is these like kind of common denominators that they require in cities that they travel to. So first off is affordability. Affordability is important for them because they're not tourists, they are long-term travelers. So if they're traveling for a year at a time, they need to be mindful of their budgets. So affordability is important. A lot of the nomads that travel here are coming in from Europe, the UK, the US. So they do have good disposable income and the exchange rate is in their favor. But they do look for a deal and they want to make sure they are kind of still in line with their budgets at the end of the day. So affordability is a big one, and South Africa does fall in line with that. Then we also have access to Wi-Fi. So yeah, our Wi-Fi, you know, we have some really good like hotspots, like the co-working spaces where you can get 100 megabytes per second. But then some accommodations perhaps only have 10 megabytes per second, and that isn't going to be good enough for a digital nomad. So access to Wi-Fi is important. I think we are above certain other countries where they do travel, for instance, Bali. Although that's also trying to improve in terms of Wi-Fi accessibility and speed. So that's something that we're on the fence about, but I do think we do have good access to Wi-Fi. And then access to amenities. Cape Town has a really good infrastructure. We have good access to medical facilities. We have grocery stores. We have everything a Western country could have. So when someone travels here, that's something they do look for. And we have that. So it's one of the things digital nomads do mention to me, and they say, well, it's so easy here. They don't have to worry about anything. They can travel here with a backpack and they still have access to everything they need if they do. And then, yeah, so English speaking. Like I said, a lot of the digital nomads are coming from Western countries. So being English speaking does allow for less of a language barrier when here, which just makes it easier to live long term and to integrate themselves into the community. Although some of them, especially those coming from Europe, English will be their second language, but they still are able to communicate, which is important. Cool, time zone. Time zone is important for digital nomads because a lot of them are working remotely. If they are employed by a remote employer overseas, they may need to work between 8 to 5 normal hours, and it makes sense for them to be within a similar time zone, so they don't have to worry about getting up at early hours or working late afternoons. So for Europeans and for the UK, South Africa is a prime time zone location for digital nomads. And we are also in a different seasonality. So when it's winter there, they can come here for summer. So it really does work out for them. You know, adventure and culture. I'm not going to mention too much about that. We know Cape Town and the Western Cape has a lot of adrenaline activities, lots of fun things to do. Paragliding, skydiving, bungee jumping. Digital nomads love that. They love taking advantage of everything around them and experiencing a city to its fullest. And of course, culture. So they like immersing themselves in local cultures as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that's all very encouraging, Andrea. And what do you see the opportunities for collaboration with the tourism industry? I mean, what would you propose?
Okay, so we talked about that. Okay, well, some collaboration opportunities that I did mention here. So, like I said, digital nomads definitely do look for longer term accommodation options. And we've talked about that quite a lot, and there's a lot of innovation in that space. But at the end of the day, it still becomes quite expensive, and there isn't something that's very obviously available to a digital nomad. So they will look for monthly rentals, and a lot of them are quite savvy, so they're very tech savvy. They want to find the best deal from a monthly basis with as many inclusions as possible. So accommodation providers could look at offering monthly packages and adjusting their spaces to accommodate for digital nomads better. So that's an obvious one. I think the mindset needs to change in terms of daily rates, because this is a long-term trend and there are going to be a lot of digital nomads coming to Cape Town. So they need something that meets that demand. So that's one. Another one is offering co-working space accessibility. Digital nomads, of course, they need fast Wi-Fi, and a lot of them will work from home. But they also like community. Community is extremely important for digital nomads, if not the most important thing. And that's what my retreats kind of revolve around. So they need access to a co-working space where they can meet other people and where they can get their work done and be kind of successful doing that. So accommodation spaces can look at, it's really just an open space with fast Wi-Fi, good chairs, ergonomic chairs. It's not too complicated, but it makes a big difference to someone looking for a potential place to stay. Yeah, and then what else did I say here? Okay, so there's a big trend in terms of co-living. So if you haven't heard about co-living, it's really a place where it's almost called housing as a service now. So housing as a service and co-living is where people come and they congregate and they live together. So if it's in a guest house, they would have community events. They would be staying together in the sense that they have their private rooms and private bathrooms, but there's community events in the evenings, pizza nights, movie nights, all types of community-driven activities, weekend trips, because digital nomads travel alone. They're solo travelers, and yeah, they really want to meet other like-minded people that understand them and that can inspire them as well. So adapting your space to a co-living space could be a huge opportunity. If you look at places all around the world, Selena is a massive, massive organization that is co-living around the world. Outside, another one. They are making a massive name for themselves across cities. All they offer is private bedrooms with private bathrooms in a building. It's no different to any other space, but they've positioned it according to a niche, being the digital nomad, and they make sure that community is at the forefront of their offering. So that's something to think about. I will say that in Cape Town, there's definitely a demand for that, and I don't see, if any, co-living spaces. There are a couple, and they are, trying to pioneer it, but it's definitely a space you can get into. And then, yeah, like I said, just improve community. If you can't adapt your space completely, think of how you can incorporate community-driven events that cater towards the digital nomad. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrae. And just as a follow-up to that, I mean, can tourism products partner with Work Wanderers? I mean, particularly when the market opens to really push their products through you?
Yeah, of course. So when we do run our co-living retreats, being a provider of these experiences, we don't own any of the properties. So we do look for co-living partners and try and look at spaces that meet all of these needs: Wi-Fi, community-driven experiences, safety in terms of COVID, individual spaces, workplace areas, all of that. So if you would like to adapt your space or have a space like that in Cape Town and you think it could work, then I'd love to speak to you. I'm also doing digital nomad friendliness consulting for the hospitality sector to try and help people adapt their space so that it actually meets the demand for digital nomads and helps them stand out from their competitors. So if you would like to contact me, I did put my handle for Work Wanderers there, as well as my email address. My name's spelled a little bit differently with the AE, so don't get confused. But yeah, you can just contact me there, and then we can go from there as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrae. And then just final question, just for some insight. I mean, how much per day do digital nomads actually spend in a destination, would you say?
Cool. So of course, I'm part of this digital nomad community as a digital nomad myself and kind of pioneering it in Cape Town. So I do meet with them on a daily basis, co-working, going to meetups, etc. And I do try and ask them these questions. Of course, it differs in terms of it differs in terms of disposable income and who they are, but I thought I'd break it down into the 3 types of digital nomad. So it's important as a industry provider to understand who you're talking to. You always need to understand your audience. And this is very important. There are 3 types of traditionally digital nomads. So we have our freelancers. Our freelancers are people working on an hourly basis. They have a bit more inconsistent income, and they are the types that will probably be a little bit more savvy with their money. So that's more on the lower end, not necessarily, but this is just a generalization. So people between the ages of about 25 to 35. They will come here for the experiences. They will want a more budget-friendly option, but they will potentially splurge more on experiences like going out to restaurants and activities and that type of thing. Then we have your remote workers. I will say this industry, if you have a high-end product, this audience is probably for you and the most stable, because the remote worker is someone with a consistent income. If they're traveling the world as a digital nomad, they're probably making a fair amount of money per month, and they can spend on accommodation, going out. So that is kind of the audience you would need to target if you have a high-end product. In terms of age and where they're from, I'll get to that, but age for the remote workers, they can be from any age, but they generally are a little bit more intermediate to advanced. So yeah, about 28 plus. and they can be up to 55, 60. Yeah. And then lastly, your online entrepreneur. This is a space where we have low end and high end. So we got your startups. They are going to also be quite budget friendly. They know how to hustle, so they want a great deal. And they want a more innovative space where they can meet people and really collaborate. So that would be really cool if you could get into that. And then the high-end online entrepreneurs, they have established businesses, very professional. They have teams. They need a very professional-oriented environment. And they would also be on the high-end side. So it's important I mentioned this so that you understand the audience. In terms of actual spend, so these are estimations. Please don't hold me to this. This is from people that I've spoken to, and I've tried to collect data as best as I can. But in terms of accommodation, this is the realistic type of spend for a digital nomad. There will be outliers, so people who are spending less and more. But on average, on the low end, we've got people spending about $8,000. So that's very low. They will negotiate Airbnbs and actual long-term leases and be staying in studio apartments or in a guest house, just a room. And then up to 25K per month per person. Normally they will stay in a room as well at 25K, but in a villa and camp spare, or at a hotel, and maybe even pay a little bit over that. So it really depends on that audience I spoke about, and trying to meet them. Remember, digital nomads can be price sensitive no matter how much their disposable income, just because they're traveling long term. So they don't want to be taken advantage of, and they're not there to splurge for 2 weeks. And then, food and drink, so between 5 and 10K, I would say. And then for activities and entertainment, I see they spend a lot here. So they spend without thinking in South Africa when it comes to activities and entertainment, because our exchange rate is so good that they will splurge completely on adrenaline activities and those types of things, and going up the garden route and doing all types of fun things. So between 5 to 15K and even more on the upper scale in terms of your audience. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrae, for those insights. And I think that it certainly stimulated a lot of ideas, and hopefully a lot of the tourism industry will take some of those insights on board. Some really encouraging words there, though. But now we're actually going to move over to tourism product owner, and this is, in fact, Jeremy Clayton, who is also the chairman of Fedhasa in the Cape, and he's also the executive director of the President Hotel and the founder of Turnkey Hospitality, and somebody who I've interacted with a lot over this past year. And tell me, Jeremy, though, I mean, my first question to you is, why have you researched this trend so much as a director of a hotel? Where do you see the opportunities in this?
Thanks, Lance, and really good to be here today. Great to engage with all the speakers and Alderman Vos. It's been an interesting journey. I think the digital nomad was clearly around pre-COVID-19, and I think there was an influx, although in its infancy, into the Cape, but it was just accelerated through COVID. We see it as an opportunity because there's longevity in it. The nomad is well suited to our product. We're already seeing some very healthy pickup. I'll go into the numbers a little bit later. And we've always tried to create an experience that's connected. It was never just about four walls and a hotel. It was about experiencing Cape Town. We reflect and represent Cape Town and South Africa for that matter. And we just think, Andrea and Lisa have mentioned the sense of community and how important that is. And we think that our product and the digital nomad are well suited to each other in that we create a sense of community. We're within that sort of Sea Point, Bantry Bay area, and it made sense for us to research it and actively chase it.
Fantastic. So can you tell me then, what are some of the initiatives that you've introduced to attract this market, and have you had some successes there? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've obviously actively sort of marketed our location. We're very close to great experiences, whether it be the beaches, the mountain, a lot of amazing restaurants, food and beverage offerings and the winelands around us, or within a short drive. So we've used that as a core focus of everything that we're doing. But equally important, though, it's a safe space that we have there. We've got different moods within the hotel. There's different speeds in that you can work in. You know, if you're in the main restaurant area, it's quite fast paced. Some of the digital nomads seem to enjoy working in that space, but we've got a lot of breakaway rooms and smaller areas within the hotel where often you're not even sometimes aware that there are people in there because the guys just get stuck into their work. They can be sitting there for hours, and so we find those spaces have worked really well. But I'd almost like to just take you back to the start of this. For us, whilst we certainly were looking at the trend right in the beginning, what seemed to happen was just as we were in level 5 and then went into the level 4 lockdown, the hotel was really founded on community. It's got 250 years of sort of deep community roots, and as a parent and worker and remote worker, we realized that a lot of the community around us needed a space to work when they couldn't go back to the office in level 4, but couldn't be around home the whole time and needed to get some quality hours in. And so this thing came about to us anyway by just opening the hotel up to local community, a lot of Sea Point, Mully Point, and CBD type people needed to get away for an hour or two, came to the hotel, spent an hour or two working there, and the legs just grew from there, and it took shape from there. So it was almost we had many lines in the water, if you want to call it that. We were looking at new opportunities, but for us, it was a sense of community that brought about this opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy. And then also, I mean, what are the kind of benefits for the corporates that are in Cape Town, for instance? And how can hotels benefit from that? I mean, I heard you also mentioning before, particularly around childcare as well. And I know that, I mean, as somebody who works from home and having to deal with my 4-year-old coming in and interrupting that, I mean, is this something that you think that corporates could take advantage of, using hotels in this kind of way?
Yeah, I think absolutely corporates can. If you don't mind, I want to come to corporates in just a second. I just want to unpack briefly the type of digital nomad that we've seen come through, and then go more into that corporate space thereafter. One of these slides that I've got, and this is from our friends at Heavy Chef, just talks briefly to the trend of where the digital nomad is working. And this really, I'm speaking to the hoteliers out there who haven't sort of gotten to the trend yet. We keep talking about rate and sort of a slightly discounted rate on what we're used to. Obviously, most stays in Cape Town, our average stay pre-COVID was about 2.3 days. The digital nomad's stay is I heard 28 days. We're closer to 45, 60-day stays, which is phenomenal for so many reasons. And what's really important to us is, sure, the rate might not be the same as the room rate that we got previously, but you can see on this slide, they're spending close to 50% of their time in the hotel. So you get this captive audience, or hotel or hostel, as we have on this slide. And whilst the room rate has always been an important part of our fundamentals, our KPIs, you now have a person who is forming a community, who's there, they're having a glass of wine, they're having multiple coffees, sandwiches, they're really experiencing your product throughout, which is to me as important as the old room rate back in the day. So it's a different perspective. I found this slide particularly interesting because you got about 50% hotel and then a lot of time spent in the coffee shops, and you can see the guys also spending about 25% of their time working from their vehicle, which I found incredible. But it really is a change in trend. It's going to take a long time for us to understand this better, to really digest it all. And as I said, it's in its infancy right now, so we're going to learn as we go. I just want to move on one or two slides from there. I think, again, our other speakers have spoken to it, but location was a critical one on this one. Infrastructure, we've found, is so important. We'd put in gig Wi-Fi probably 2-3 years ago, sort of ahead of the trend, but almost everybody who inquires about staying inquires about the Wi-Fi capabilities, and then that ability to just break away, to have a quiet room if they need to be able to pop earphones on, go into a meeting. I think, my view was that it was really the sort of software engineers, etc. But it turns out it's not. It's such a broad portfolio of people that are working remotely, and we've learned that trend as well over the last year. So that's been really interesting. The value for money, I think we've talked about sort of pricing, but I always consider it more value for money at the end of the day. So sure, the room rate might be a bit lower, but from a hotel perspective, we have a long stay guest, someone you get to know, they become part of your family, you become part of their community, and that for me is value. So it's not always just about the rands and the cents at the end of the day, and so I see that trend continuing there. And then, Lance, going back to your question around the corporate space, I think work-life balance has evolved into work-life blend, right? And whilst the corporates aren't fully back in the office yet, and we'll see this in a slide later, I think one of the major trends that we are going to see is that people are still going to be spending a lot less time in each other's presence in the workspace. And therefore, in the corporate space, it's more important than ever that the time they do spend together is quality time, and highly culturally driven. And that's where I think the corporate's going to spend more time in incentive type locations. Cape Town's primed for that. It's a great place to be bringing incentive groups, corporate groups. And I think that space is going to be more in demand than ever before. And that's where I see the corporates really sort of taking advantage of this. The other thing that I think is going to happen is the classic sort of sales trip that was 1 or 2 or 3 nights. It's probably going to be a longer trip now. The guys are going to stay for longer. They're not going to do these short bursts. They're going to stay in places where they feel safer. And again, that's going to morph from a classic corporate trip into a bit of a pleasure trip. So that's where I see that space going.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jeremy. And I mean, how do you see this trend evolving? Because obviously it's quite a new trend and it's always evolving. And do you see other hotels also picking up on this and innovating their products? Yeah, just tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, look, I don't see the trend slowing down anytime soon. Again, all indicators are that people will still going back to the office, but probably in sort of 10, 20, 30% of where it was previously, certainly in the classic 5-day workspace. So I see the trend continuing for the long term. I see Cape Town moving rapidly from 42 on that list into the top 5. There's absolutely red tape that we need to cut to get there. But my view is, and I've been fortunate enough to sort of work in probably 12, 13 locations around the world. There's no location like Cape Town for balanced quality life and lifestyle. And so I see the trend evolving that anybody who has time or flexibility in their job and can work to a degree wherever they want will go to these incredible experiential destinations, and Cape Town's top of the list there. Coming back to what you were saying about other hotels, it's such a or let me say this. I think what hotels need to do is embrace change, firstly, but they need to look at their USPs, firstly. Hotels are incredibly cost sensitive, especially around the Cape and South Africa right now, because of this really poor business that we've had coming through the doors for 16 months. We've had to watch every penny that we have. And so it's a tough time to encourage people to invest, although the best time to invest is during the quieter time. So I think it's a great time to invest, provided your USPs talk to the digital nomad requirements, i.e. you do need to have the right location and spaces where they can work. Infrastructure is something you can install. Changes in staff attitude and staff, the way staff deal with the digital nomad is really important. And that's the kind of training you can do. Costs very little, but you've got to make sure, I think, that you have the right location that's attractive to the digital nomads. So again, I encourage the hoteliers that do have the right location, that meet the right USPs. It's really time to, I think now's the time to get involved. Collectively, we can set a really great precedent and encourage more people to come into the Cape. And obviously, rising tide lifts all, which will be a good story for us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy. I mean, just as a final question then, I mean, as chairperson of Fedhasa in this region, what is your guidance to the industry in terms of taking advantage of the opportunities posed by this new trend? Is there any final words that you'd like to share with them?
There are, and I'd like to also just wrap up at the end with a journalist who recently stayed with us. But just from a Fedhasa perspective, we've done everything we can to support industry. We've worked with a lot of our provincial and national partners through the process. But my view is that leisure tourism, I believe, bounces back. And again, the Cape, South Africa is such a strong global trend, and people have always wanted to come here. But one thing we've always been a little bit uncertain about is how the MICE business bounces back, how the corporate segments bounce back. It's been a big trend in Cape Town over the last couple of years. There's been a huge focus around that. And whilst I think it comes back, I think it takes a bit longer than the leisure tourism to come back. And so I think work from hotel, as we've termed it, or the digital nomad remote workers can quickly buoy up occupancies. So I, again, encourage hoteliers to chase the trend so long as they're in the right position to do so. I don't think the volume gets turned on overnight by any means. I can, at the present, we've been involved in this now for even pre-COVID, but really actively in the last 8-10 months. And at this stage, we've got about 20-22 long stays in-house. And fine, that does equate to a couple of thousand bed nights a year, but it's not a massive number when you look at 350 bedrooms. But it's certainly moving in the right direction, and we're getting more and more inquiries every day. And we've recently launched a forex-based pricing into the regional and national markets, international markets. Whilst they're not fully open at this stage, we think it was important to get our name out there and get Cape Town out there. So we've done that. And then, Lance, just to conclude, you'll see one of my last slides. We recently had a travel and leisure journalist. So travel and leisure, obviously one of the biggest publications worldwide in travel. Katie Jackson stay with us. And Katie had done a story, I believe it was one of the safari products in Botswana, came down to Cape Town for 2 days just before transitioning back home. 2 days turned into, I think it was a week and a half, at which stage we sort of engaged with her and we were talking to her about a number of things. I think Katie ended up staying about 3 weeks at the President, and as far as I know has just left, but she may still be in house. But Katie summed it up really well, and if you'd let me, I'll just quickly read us something she had to say. And if you have time, go and read a blog, because I think it really summarizes a lot of the conversations we've talked about today. But in a nutshell, she says, she talked about why she stayed at the President, the services, and all the other values. She says, but perhaps the biggest difference is that at home, I don't have to have anyone greeting me with a big smile, a sincere good morning, good afternoon, or good anything for that matter. The President Hotel and its staff is one of the reasons I dread the day that I have to leave. I know that whenever I have an IT problem, a question about Cape Town, or any other request, they stop what they're doing and are always there to help me out. I'm paying for these services, of course. However, it's no more than I'd pay to cover my mortgage back home. Plus, by replacing the distractions of running my household, I have, with the hotel's on-site amenities, I have far more productive time here. I know when we reach herd immunity, people's fears will go away. However, if you ask me, I hope that the work from hotel concept is here to stay. And I just think that sort of summarizes what the digital nomad and the remote workers are looking for more than ever.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Jeremy. And that's a great point to end on your presentation. And I think, yeah, I mean, we need ambassadors like this as well, spreading the word out there. So that really is great to see. So thank you for your insights and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Pleasure. I think the great news there, Lance, is also that Travel and Leisure have agreed to a story about the Cape going into their publication, all about remote working. So
fantastic.
So millions will see it, which is great.
Fantastic, Jeremy. Well, that really does grow it. So that really is great to see. And we're going to go now to a very different perspective, but a very, very important perspective, in fact, in the whole remote working trend. And we're going to go to Angelika, and I hope I pronounced this right, Yakovchuk. But you can always correct me if I didn't. And she's an immigration specialist attorney. She's also the EU Chamber Immigration Policy Lead. And the reason why we've asked Angelika to come onto the panel is because specifically we want to look at the remote working visa and how much there is a demand for that. So maybe as my first question, is there a big demand that you're seeing for a remote working visa in South Africa? Angelika?
Lance, good morning and thank you. And good morning to the viewers out there. I just want to say that my fellow panelists have done a fantastic job, leaving my part of the presentation very brief, but more importantly, I'm inspired to lose my travel agent's number. Next time I take holidays, I certainly remain in South Africa. So thank you very much. Yeah, so as I said, all the essentials of the discussion had been covered. Perhaps one point to briefly discuss is what does it mean from legislative perspective? And I want to highlight the obvious. The discussion points to the fact that we are still talking about the holiday visa. In essence, we're talking about touristic activities. We are talking about a visit which does not intend any work activities in South Africa. And what I mean by that is that the nomads, the remote workers will continue working for the current companies, the employers generating the income in their countries, as it were, right? It's we're talking about them simply changing the location from their office or from the current places of residence and coming to South Africa. That is a very important point to make, because when we talk about expanding on current immigration regime, we need to take into account the unintended consequences. And the point I make highlights the fact that the local employment market is not affected. Right. So in terms of Immigration Act, the holiday visa is covered under Section 11. There are two categories, subcategories as it were, that are covered. The shorter term, up to 90 days, and extended holiday visa. As the immigration law stands now, the digital nomad, on the initial analysis, can freely utilize the holiday visa. The limitation there is, however, is that it's up to 90 days. It may be extended in South Africa for further 90 days, but to sell the destination for 60 days at a maximum becomes a little bit challenging. Just to add to what Alderman Vos has mentioned, and just to simplify the point a little bit, it is suggested that Immigration Act may not need to be amended. So we may not need to go through lengthy legislative procedures. Simply, it is suggested that the matter is dealt with by way of ministerial directive, expanding upon the activities that are already recognized in terms of Section 11 for the purposes of extended visit.
Thank you, Angelika. Well, that sounds very encouraging. And I mean, you've obviously engaged a lot, both with the EU Chamber as well as with the South African government of this. I mean, and I think the big question that everyone kind of wants to know is what potential for success do you think we will achieve in terms of trying to get this remote work visa? Does it look promising? Does it look like we have a receptive audience in terms of the government to a remote working visa, or at least to the ministerial directive that you talk about?
Yeah, so ministerial directive is a simplified manner in which to deal with expanding upon current policy. To answer your question, the first thing I want to say is that the idea has not been dismissed. So we start there. That's a good point. In my view, the proposal is gaining the momentum, and the discussion on the equivalent of remote worker visa is gaining momentum within the government. Some of my fellow panelists mentioned that in excess of 20 other countries have in recent months implemented the equivalent of the remote worker visa, the digital nomad, etc., etc. Which points to the fact that the governments are capable of adjusting their policies on demand and quite quickly. And South Africa will be competing with those destinations. I'm going a little bit over the point that you asked in your last question, but I just wanted to make mention of that. But coming back to your question, in my view, the discussion is gaining the momentum.
Fantastic. Now, that's really encouraging to hear. And of course, we should also make the point, I mean, today we're talking about Cape Town and how it's such a great destination for remote working. But of course, this could also apply to the rest of South Africa as a whole. And there's some other wonderful destinations. So such a remote working visa would not only benefit Cape Town, it would benefit the whole of South Africa. So it really would be great to see that implemented. And I think the industry is all kind of holding their breath for this to happen.
Thank you, Lon. So that's a crucial point that you've just made, and thank you for that. Because when we talk about a national policy, it has to be all-inclusive. So it's got to cover and take into account the benefits for the entire country. At this event this morning, we are promoting the city of Cape Town. But in reality, we understand that entire country and other provinces, connectivity permitting, would stand to benefit. Andrea and other colleagues at the panel would be able to comment and confirm that the tourists cover numerous provinces when they come to South Africa. Yes, we have the ocean to offer in Cape Town, but we also have the bush experience to offer, etc., etc. I'm a little bit out of my depth compared to the panelists to speak about this point, but indeed the entire country stands to benefit.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And I know we are running out of time, but we did say we would leave some time for questions and answers. And I've just been relying on Tegan to send me, in fact, through some of the questions onto my phone. So there's one question that I got here, which I think is probably also on the top of everyone's mind as well, particularly when it comes to international tourism, is the kind of restrictions that other countries are placing on their citizens coming to South Africa. Do we think that those restrictions are going to hold back remote working, or is this a different set of category, and that actually those restrictions won't hold back the remote workers? I mean, I know, Andrea, you said that people are still coming even though there are some restrictions back in their home country. I'd just be interested in the panel's thoughts on that. I'll start with you, Andrea.
Okay. It's a good question, and it's very different for people coming from different countries. So I've seen there hasn't been much of a deterrence from people coming from Europe. Europeans have been coming in and they have restrictions against us going, not us, but them going back. However, they are allowing citizens to come back, but they would need to quarantine. I don't know all the regulations around each country's quarantine measures and COVID policies, but I have seen that hasn't been a deterrence. I have seen less UK people because it has been a lot stricter there. So I do think it depends on the mindset in the country and like the kind of media around that. But like I said, Europeans definitely coming in as well as Americans, the US, it seems to be a little bit more relaxed. So what I do find is some nomads that are worried about it, that are here, they will go through other countries when traveling back. So for example, Croatia has very flexible or low regulations in terms of entering the country when re-entering the EU. So US citizens as well as Europeans alike, if they have extreme COVID measures when returning, like quarantines in their home country, will go through other countries like Albania, Croatia, stay for 2 weeks and then travel back to their home country or continue traveling as a digital nomad to any other European country. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And Jeremy, I see you looking very thoughtful at me. Have you got any thoughts on the restrictions and how it might affect this trend?
Thanks, Lance. I think Andrea's hit it nail on the head. It's the digital nomad has a lot of time as well on their hands. So being in quarantine, even on return, wouldn't be a train smash for most of them. A lot of them are able to, as we've seen, work from their car, let alone, a room or wherever else where they'd have to stay when they return to their country. But I think the digital nomad's not necessarily looking to return to their country. So they would just make the next objective choice on what the destination is that didn't really enforce a quarantine. That's certainly my view on it. The other thing for me is again, whilst it has certainly taken off and been accelerated through COVID, my view is that we're in the first 100 meters off the marathon here. So whilst absolutely the regulations are probably frustrating to some of the remote workers, and certainly some of the families that we hope that will come out from Europe, the States, regional families as well, it's right in its infancy. This has got a long way to go. We need to work collectively, make sure Cape Town, the province and South Africa is appealing to these guys, because the uptake might be relatively small right now, but once everything opens up and we return to a relative normality, we need to be well positioned to take up the opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy. And Lisa, and from Cape Town tourism, side, I know that these restrictions have obviously been a big issue. Not just in terms of remote working, but I think that there is definitely efforts at a national level to lobby for some of those countries to relax some of those restrictions. But do you want to share your thoughts on that at all, Lisa?
Look, as I said in my presentation, this is still very new to us. We've just gotten into it. From our side, what we are going to be doing and what we can do is to assist the likes of those who have already attempted to shift their product to innovate, such as the president, to support them with their marketing endeavors. But from our side, we do need to do a lot more research into this trend before we can, put forward more commitment in that regard.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. And well, yes, sorry, Angelika. One more statement from you, and then I think we're going to be out of time. So
I'll be very brief, just on a point of restrictions. It's a very important legislative point to make, and that is we have to be very clear which activities will be then permitted on this category of visa. In other words, which activities are specifically excluded, and those would be the work activities, all the activities that are covered by other section in the Immigration Act. So again, I stress the point that in essence, it's a visitor's visa for the extended duration of stay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Angelika. I think that's really great to end on that note then. And I think that what you've heard today is some really exciting innovations happening already in this space, but I think we've got a long way to go. And like I said right in the beginning, we in Cape Town are not satisfied to just be in the top 50. We want to be in the top 10. And I think Jeremy said we want to be number 5, I think it is. Or maybe even top 5. So let's see if we can aim for that. And let's have another webinar in a year's time. And hopefully we'll be able to announce that. So thanks everyone for attending. And hopefully the industry got inspired and people are going to go away and look at innovating their products to cater to this new trend. So thanks everyone. Thank you. Bye.